We will be using an 1112 Explorer, which is used for calculus detection. We will be starting with the upper left quadrant, and I will have my patient face towards me, and I'll be sitting around 10 and 11 o'clock. I'm going to start by placing my mirror at the distal of 15 so I could see where I'm exploring. Then I'm going to place my explorer at that distal line angle and go towards that distal surface. I'm going to take it out and reinsert at that distal line angle and go towards that mesial surface using different types of strokes. I was using the oblique stroke. I can go back and do vertical strokes. Then also going back with horizontal strokes. It's important while you're exploring to have a light grasp and have a relaxed C-shaped fulcrum, just so you are able to easily detect calculus. To finish the rest of the quadrant, I'll be working on the anterior teeth and we'll be working with the surfaces towards. And I'll have my patient just look straight upward and I'll be sitting around 9 to 10 o'clock. So the upper left quadrant ends at the mesial of number 9. So we're going to start with number 11 and we're going to start at the midline and work our way towards the mesial surface. Now for this next part, I will be doing surfaces away, and I'll be sitting at 12 o'clock and having my patient just slightly look to the right. So now we are going to start with the surfaces away. And we're going to start at that midline and go towards the distal surfaces, all the way up to number 11. Now I'll be doing the upper left quadrant on the lingual surface, and I'll be sitting at 8 o'clock, and I'll have my patient look slightly to the left. So we're going to be starting on the distal number 15, very similar to how we're exploring on the facial surface. Start by inserting that explorer on that distal line angle and go towards that distal surface. I'm using my mirror and placing it right behind number 15 so I could see where exactly I'm exploring. So once you're done with the distal surface, you're going to go ahead and reinsert at that distal line angle and then make your way to that mesial surface with different types of strokes. Now we'll be working on the lingual surfaces of the maxillary anteriors, and I'll be starting with the surfaces toward. And I'll have my patient just face forward, and I'll be sitting at 8 o'clock. I'll be starting at the midline of 11 and working my way towards the mesial surface. I'll be doing that all the way to the mesial of number 9. The next quadrant we'll be doing is the lower right facial surface, and I'll be sitting at 10 to 11 o'clock, and my patient will be looking slightly to the right, so slightly towards me. In a real live patient, I would be retracting their lip with a mirror or with my hand. I'll begin by inserting the explorer at the distal line angle and working my way towards that distal surface. Then I'm going to reinsert at that distal line angle and work my way towards the mesial surface. Next, we will be exploring the lingual surfaces of the mandibular anteriors. I'm going to have my patient just face forward, and I'm going to be sitting at 8 o'clock. We're going to start on the lingual of 22, starting at the midline, going all the way to the mesial surface. Once you get to 25, you will be going from the midline to the distal surface. Now we'll be doing surfaces away, and I'll have my patient just face forward still, and I will be sitting at 12 o'clock. Here I'll be starting on 27, and I'll be starting at that midline going towards the mesial surface. Then when we get back to tooth 24, you'll be going from the midline to the distal surface. Then you'll make your way back to tooth 22. Lastly, we'll be doing the lingual of the lower right quadrant, and I'll have my patient look slightly to the right. And I'll be sitting at 11 o'clock, but sometimes I swing over to 1 o'clock. Again, just like the other quadrants, I'll be starting at that distal line angle, making my way to the distal surface, reinserting at the distal line angle, and using vertical strokes going over to that mesial surface. And then you would finish the rest of the posterior teeth in that quadrant. Next, we'll be using a 1718 Mini Gracie, and it's especially helpful in areas of bone loss, and it's used on the distal surfaces of posterior teeth, and it's helpful in narrow, deep pockets, along with furcations. Here I am using it on the distal surfaces of the lower left quadrant, and I'll be using that in the furcation as well. And when you are debriding a furcation, you want to split it into half, so acting as if you are debriding two separate teeth. To finish off this quadrant, we'll be using the 1516 Mini Gracies. This instrument is similar to the 1718 Mini Gracies, except that this one is meant for mesial surfaces of the posterior teeth. Again, I'll have my patient face slightly towards me, and I'll be sitting at 10 to 11 o'clock to be working with the lower left quadrant. As you can see, I'm starting on the mesial surfaces, and I'm starting at the base of the pocket. Then I'm bringing it up towards the CEJ using short strokes. Next, I'll be debriding the facial surface of the upper left quadrant, and I'll be sitting around 10 to 11 o'clock, having my patient face towards me. I'll be using the Langer 3-4, and it will be used on the maxillary molars and premolars. I'll be inserting at the line angle and making my way towards the distal surface. Then I'm going to reinsert at the distal line angle and make my way towards the mesial surface. Now for the lingual surface, I'll have my patient look over to the left, and I'll be sitting at 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock, using the same technique as used on the facial surface. Next, I'll be demonstrating the Micro Mini 1-2. This can be used on anteriors, but is also really good for furcations. Next, I'll be working on the lingual surfaces of the lower right quadrant, and I'll have my patient look slightly to the right, and I'll go ahead and sit from 10 to 11 to 1 o'clock. I'll be using a rigid Gracie number 1314. This instrument is beneficial for areas of bone loss and is used on the distal surfaces of posterior teeth. Now for the mesial surfaces, we'll be using the 1112 rigid Gracies. I'll be starting at that distal line angle, going all over the straight lingual over to the mesial surface. And the same technique would be used for the whole quadrant. Next, I'll be using the Langer 5-6, and I'll be using it on the lingual surfaces of the mandibular and maxillary anteriors. We'll be debriding going surfaces towards and surfaces away. Again, we'll be working with the surfaces away and surfaces towards, similar to when we were exploring, starting at that midline, going towards the mesial or distal surfaces. I'll be also sitting in the same chair positions as earlier. Now we'll start with the maxillary anteriors, again doing surfaces towards and surfaces away, with the same technique and chair positions as used when exploring. Another instrument that can be used for the anterior interproximal areas is the NEVI 4, and I'll be demonstrating this instrument on the mandibular anteriors. The next instrument I'm going to use is the McCall 1718, and this instrument is beneficial on the distals of second and third molars. This can be used with vertical strokes, starting at that distal surface, going from lingual to facial. Then I like to go from facial to lingual. The last instrument I'll be demonstrating is the diamond file with a mesial and distal end. This instrument is great on removing light residual fine calculus. And as you can see, I'm using that mesial end, and I started from that distal line angle all the way to that mesial end. Now I'll be taking that other end and working on the distal surface.